Jason Barron. I'm going to read again from this book, Race by John R. Baker. This time, specifically with regards to Nordic and the Nordic and Mediterranean subtypes of the European race. I'm not going to read the entire chapter because it's too long. It's got a lot of big words, and so I'm just going to read part of it. The most typical Nordids live in the part of the Netherlands north of the Rhine, in Germany along the north coast from East Friesland to Schleswig, Holstein, and beyond, the Elbe to Mecklenburg in Denmark, Norway, except the south and southwestern coastal districts, Sweden, the Åland Islands, and the coast of Finland, also in the Faroe Islands and Iceland. The population of Great Britain is largely of Nordic origin, but there was considerable admixture of Mediterranean or possibly Mediterranean Ethiopid stock in ancient times, and the proportion of quite typical Nordics is not very high in Great Britain. In the following account of the physical characters presented by typical members of the Nordic subrace, attention will be focused chiefly on those that distinguish Nordics from Alpinids. In other words, Nordics from Alpines. Skull. The brain case is typically either dolichocranial or just within the mesocranial range. The striking difference between many Nordic and Alpinid skulls in this respect may be realized by comparing talking about figures and pictures that in the book. The skull shown in D has a cranial index of, okay, I'm going to skip this part. Let's see. The parietal eminence is not strongly marked in Nordids, and the skull appears well filled and smoothly arched above, whether viewed from the side or in front. Occipital projects, and the inion is a distinct eminence. The zygomatic bones tend to bend inwards from the places of their articulation with the processes of the temporals, so that the front of the face is narrower, in fact, than in any other Europid subrace except the Dinarids. The facial skeleton as a whole is high in relation to its width. The orbits are large, well rounded above and at the corners, and high in relation to their width. The interorbital distance is moderate. The nose is leptorine with strongly projecting nasal bones. The chin projects forward. The gonea of the lower jaw do not flare outward. Let's see. So skip this part. Brow bridges and somewhat sloping forehead, the narrow front of the face, the straight or slightly convex nose with compressed LA and narrow tip. All these characteristic Nordic features are seen clearly in the two illustrations. Again, I'm not looking for the illustrations. The complexion tends to be florid and easily freckled by bright sunlight. The eyes are not set very far apart. In advanced age, there is a curious tendency for the upper eyelid to sink at its outer side. Characteristically, the iris is blue or pale gray, but sometimes pale brown. Kitchener's were described as blue as ice and are pale blue in the painting by Herkimer in the National Portrait Gallery. The scalp hair of Nordics is not very abundant, and there is a tendency to baldness in males. The hairs are fine and flexible. Too much stress has been laid by some authors on the color of the scalp hair in Nordics. It is commonly ash blonde, the platinum blonde of women, golden brown, pale brown, or reddish brown. Many adult Nordics whose hair is darker than any of these colors had golden locks when they were children. Gradual darkening is quite usual. The various subraces of the Europid race in their typical forms are not equally different from one another. For instance, the Nordic and Mediterranean subraces are close to one another in morphological characters, much more so than either is to the Alpinid. It is not always very easy to distinguish a Nordic skull from a Mediterranean skull, though anyone could distinguish it from an Alpinid. In external characters, however, the typical Mediterranean of southern Italy and the western Mediterranean islands differs from the Nordic in several respects. He is much shorter. Indeed, the mean stature of adult males is said to be only about 161 or 162 centimeters. He is perhaps slightly more dolichocephalic on the average than the modern Nordic. The forehead is slightly steeper and tends to run with less interruption into the slope of the nose, which does not project quite so much and is somewhat wider, though still leptorine. The continuity of the forehead with the nose was much admired by the classical sculptors who exaggerated it to produce the so-called Greek profile. In actual fact, continuity of the two slopes with no alteration of slope or sunken region in the vicinity of the nasion is unknown in any ethnic taxon of man. Though well exhibited, for instance, by the Bornean leaf monkey, Presbytus rubicundus rubidus. The face of the Mediterranean is oval, perhaps tapering below more than that of the Nordic. The ears tend to be smaller, the lips somewhat thicker. The differences between the sexes are more marked, the hips of Mediterranean women being relatively wider. Apart from these morphological differences, the scalp hair is very dark brown, commonly called black, and the iris is also very dark. Okay, so these are observations that everybody has already made. But this scientifically verifies it. Um, so yeah, I just figured I would share that with you, and well, that's it for now. Anybody who wants to look into it more, it, you can get this book, you can order it. Sure, Amazon probably carries it. It also has, I'm going to go through the whole book right now, but it also has an interesting thing where it talks about racial body odors and how one race usually doesn't like the body odor of another race, and it's believed that that is the natural purpose of that is to prevent miscegenation, to prevent interracial mating, to prevent race mixing, and that's why one race doesn't usually like the smell of another race. And I observed this when I was in prison, and of course, we're talking about all males, but still, I did notice that um, one race would always be complaining about the other race's body odor, um, and I rarely, if ever, heard people complaining about the body odor of people of their own race. So to me that based on that observation, I would say that this book is correct. That the reason for that is that the reason why one race is repulsed by the body odor of another race is to keep the races apart. Now that would only make sense. Um, okay, I'm Jason Barron. Have a wonderful day. I will speak to you again soon.